All right.
Alrighty, we should be live. Nathan Bunnett, episode 42. I got my man Swisheel back here. Haven't had him on in a while, even though I would have loved to have had him on more, but we have both been very busy, unfortunately. But it is towards the end of February, and this episode should come out on Tuesday, which means it will literally be the last day of February on the 28th. And all you basketball fans, I hope you know what month comes after February. It is the final beginnings of March Madness coming up now that Super Bowl is over and everything. So I had to get my local college basketball expert on with Swiss Eel because he knows a lot more about college basketball than I do. He keeps up with it. You know, he's a huge Spurs fan, even though you're a North Carolina boy. So you've been keeping up with UNC.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've been keeping up with them lately. I don't know if I'm an expert. I'm just a fanatic. We'll
Yeah.
say. I like to watch whatever I can. Don't watch North Carolina this year. It's not fun.
Yeah, I told you I haven't been watching games because the games are always on whenever I'm at work, but I've been keeping up with the score and like every time the UNC score is posted, I'm always like keeping up with the UNC score and I'm like, man, UNC lost another one. I know Swisseel's not happy, and then you always like tweet back and you're like, yeah, we played horrible that game or something like that.
Yeah, they're a weird team this year, man. I think they should not have been preseason number one. Everybody put them there after their like kind of miracle run last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've got so many talented people, but they still can't figure out how to put it together. So I'm wondering if they even make the tournament at this point. So
Yeah.
but hey, we're hanging in there. We'll just take it one game at a time, like all the coaches say.
Yeah. What's crazy to me is like, of course, we're gonna bring this up with our March Madness talk, but like the NCAA has been crazy competitive this year. But the reason I find that weird,
Weird year.
yeah, the reason I find that weird though is because it seems almost the opposite of what trend you would be expecting. And what I mean by that is when you look at the mock draft now, and obviously you have many videos on your channel talking about, you know, international players and everything like that, and how so many more international players are coming into the NBA. If you look at the mock draft, like 50% of it is either international or it's G League. So you would expect with more international and G League players, the NCAA wouldn't be as competitive because they would be like, well, there's no point. Like, I don't want to say there's no point because obviously they still want to win a championship for their school. But I mean, like, there's less motivation there because there's less NBA scouts around them because they know that they now have to compete with these G League players. They now have to compete with these international players to get drafted, and it's not as much of a competition between schools anymore where it's like, oh, if I go to Duke and Duke wins the championship, I immediately boost my draft stock, you know, exponentially. Versus now it's like, you know, you could win the NCAA championship and you could still be picked like 20th rather than in the top 10.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that's a lot of the reason why it's so weird this year. This year in particular, I don't know if there's any team that I'm like, yes, that's the favorite to win the championship. And I think it's so competitive because of what you said. A lot of these players choosing to go to G League Ignite. We've got foreign leagues, and obviously, you know, there's all this controversy with him, and obviously that's a big thing to consider. But like Brandon Miller's the big name, and all that. I mean, Alabama, they got a 24-4 record, but
Yeah.
yeah, they've gone and laid eggs against some people. They lost to Tennessee. Tennessee was up there in like the top five, and they lose like 3 games in a row, and stuff like that. Houston has the best record; they're number one right now. But then you think, okay, they played some good teams and lost. You know, for my money, I think Kansas has looked pretty good, but
Yeah.
even then, yeah, they've lost a few games to teams that I thought, hey, you should be better than. And it's like the year after year debate. How do you measure conference competition? Because you get someone like the Big 12, where all these teams are ranked in the preseason, and then they have to play each other over and over again, and each win keeps counting as a ranked win or a loss, and that influences your strength of schedule. And then come tournament time, you may not have that conference do as well. I mean, hell, last year they said the ACC was garbage, and they had 2 of the 4 teams in the Final Four with Carolina and Duke facing off, and you just never know how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
But so it's been a bizarre season, but it's made for like some really fun games with teams coming out of like Marquette having like the comeback season of the century under Shaka now. Kansas State's looking really good, and you get Keontae. Can't think of his name. Keontae Johnson, I believe. He used to play at Florida. Guy who collapsed on the floor, and now he's made a comeback and he's doing really well. Then you get like some teams like Northwestern who lose their top 2 bigs to both UNC and Duke, and Pete Nance, and they're up there in the top 25 playing better than they were last year with them. So it's going to be a fun tournament, I think, this year. Lots of like upsets, and I don't really know who's going to win the title.
It's definitely going to be fun, man. Like I'm so excited for it because like I saw somebody in the comments the other day on the March Madness Instagram because Villanova beat Xavier by only 1 point. And like Villanova is like one of the top seeds and Xavier's like 16th, and the top comment on that post said something like, I feel like auto pick is the way to go this season. Like,
well, yeah, and that's a bizarre thing like you brought up. Like Villanova has Cam Whitmore, who's looking like he's going to be a top 5 pick, and he was crazy in international play this summer, but like they're not really doing much, and all that. And Baylor, you've got Keontae George, who's looking like a top 10 pick, and then Texas was supposed to have a top 10 pick with Dylan Mitchell. He hasn't looked amazing at all. Then their coach gets fired for basically assault, although charges were dismissed on him, so we don't know what's happened with that. But this new guy's got him revitalized. It's just so weird.
Yeah, you got to remember too, like even like huge draft picks in college, like they can look great in college, but once they get to the NBA too, they can be like not live up to the hype because everybody on the Spurs wanted Kai Jones from UT because he was from Texas and he was a big. And now you never really hear about him.
Want him.
I saw a few Spurs fans, myself included, go a bit crazy that we didn't pick Kai Jones. But then I started to like Primo, and then now I don't like Primo anymore, obviously. Dude, it sucked because like 3 of my highest viewed videos on my channel are about Primo. So I had to debate, like, do I delete these videos now or do I keep them up? And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna keep them up. If people complain, they can look at the published date on it. Like, they can look at when it was posted and know that it was from before the before times.
If there is a bright side to anything Josh Primo related, it's that having him off the team, I think, has accelerated Jeremy Sohan's growth.
Yeah.
I don't know that he gets those on-ball opportunities or anything, the chance to play make like he has now. And hey, if losing Primo, obviously he needs to go with what he did, but if losing him means it paves the way for the next great guy in Sohan to come through, I'll take it, man. Take it.
It just sucks, man, because like again, I did a video back like before this season even started about like how Victor Wembanyama, if we did end up getting him, sort of compliments everybody. And like in a way it was almost like, I don't want to make this like comparison because people are going to be like, whoa, you're comparing him to like the 2 best players the Spurs have had. But like Primo and Wembanyama to me honestly would be like, I if you want more details and more about what my thoughts on this are, because I'm probably going to poorly explain it here, but I explain it better in the actual video. I sort of said that they would make almost like a Tony Parker and Tim Duncan duo based on the way that they play. And I said, like Primo would be a really good 3-point. I was like, Wembanyama and Sohan would be like incredible on defense, one on perimeter and one on like the inside. And like who did I compare them to? the 2004 Pacers. The names are slipping me. Jermaine O'Neal and Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
Like those two. Like one. Like if you've ever watched the Netflix documentary, they said World Peace was like or Juan Artest, because whatever, whichever name you want to call him. He said in the documentary, he was like, we had the best defense because you had me and Jermaine O'Neal. He was like, if you got past me on the arc, then Jermaine was gonna fuck you up. And I feel like that's the same way with like Wembanyama and Sohan. It's like one of them is gonna stop you on the outside, and if somehow you get past, the other one's stopping you on the inside. And it was just like, I felt like we had this like, everybody complimented everybody, like Malachi could run pick and rolls with Wembanyama, and it's like now we don't have Primo, and now like we got to tank even harder for Wemby because of the Pistons and the Rockets are trying to do the same thing, and
the poor Rockets are just a dumpster fire right now. I mean, I'm a Spurs fan, but it's always more fun when we're both competitive and the games mean something rather than, all right, who can give up the win last minute. So
exactly. The Spurs and Rockets, like whenever, like the Spurs and Rockets is a huge rivalry, but now we're treating it like golf. So but back to the like March Madness thing. I know it's gonna be really lame to say because people are gonna be like, "Oh, you just picked the top 4 teams. You're not thinking outside the box." But like, honest to God, like even if it is a lame choice, and because it's the top 4 teams. The top 4 teams that I would have to choose would be Houston, Alabama, Purdue, and Kansas.
I can see that.
I think those teams are going to do really good, but again, like there have been crazy upsets. Like I forget the name of the team last year, but there was the Peacocks. St. Peter's, yeah. I knew it was Saint something, but I didn't want to say it and be wrong. But they went on an incredible run last season. What's to say like another like 16th seed doesn't do the same thing? Like again, we were just talking about Xavier almost beat Villanova. Like what's to say that Xavier doesn't make it to like the Elite 8 or something somehow?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of those teams too. Like, I mean, Connecticut started the season on a tear, and then they had a terrible month of January, so they're down at like 18 now. Indiana, I think, is really good. Trace Jackson Davis is finally coming to his own. Jalen Hood-Schifino, that's a name to watch out for in the draft. He's streaky, but I swear that guy can be a really good NBA player. TCU's kind of, I mean, they have a lot of losses. I think they have 10 losses, but we're talking about the Big 12. It's all these, they're playing Kansas, in Kansas, they're playing Kansas State, they're playing Baylor, they're playing Texas. I mean, they've got all these guys, some of them twice, but I mean, they're really good. And I think they could be. Kansas State's been really good. Talk about their comeback player. I mean, it's just, I think Arizona is going to surprise a lot of people too. Watch out for Azuolas Tubelis. That guy, I actually planned on making a video on him 2 years back, because he had like his coming out party. He dropped 31 points on Evan Mobley, and I was like, "Oh shit, who is this guy?" And then he kind of disappeared after that. And I was like, "Well, damn, I didn't know if it was a fluke or not." But he's really coming to his own this year.
Yeah, I will say, ironically, I've been keeping track of a lot of players that again like aren't in the draft because of like international and G League players. A huge one that's been talked about. And the reason I brought up before, the reason that he's like not up for draft is because it's like his senior year and like a lot of other stuff. But Marquise Noel for Kansas State, he's been like popping off. Like I've been paying attention to him in like Kansas State, because like everybody's posting these stats of him, like he's the first player to have this many points in an NCAA game since Steph Curry, and stuff like that. So. But he's played at 2 different colleges, and it's his senior year at Kansas State, so that's why he's not in the draft, because it's like, it's like he's already getting up there in age, and he hasn't even played an NBA game yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny. They actually did a segment on him on ESPN the other day, and it was cool to see like everything he'd gone through, just his perspective on not getting recruited as much as other people, and and not getting the attention he felt like he deserved, and just putting in the work, and then
Yeah.
now he's on that big stage and he's showing out. And I think they were talking about like he's missed a couple of games, and the offense is like awful when he's off the floor, but
Yeah.
they're like one of the best in the country when he is. So he's a great player.
Yeah, it sucks that like I don't think we're ever gonna see him play in the NBA though, but I think that would be
Yeah, I
crazy.
mean that happens a lot with guys. Last year I was talking to our friend Clan, the Spurs fan. He was kind of watching college basketball for the first time religiously, and you'd see a guy pop off in the tournament. And you're like, oh, is this guy going to get drafted? And I'm like, more than likely not.
Yeah.
To me, that's the magic of the NCAA tournament is you're going to see.
Hmm.
I mean, like Tennessee. One guy I really like watching is Zakai Ziegler at Tennessee. I mean, he's kind of an undersized guard. He's really fun to watch. I don't know if he'll ever play a minute of NBA
Yeah.
basketball, but I love watching him there.
It was the same thing with Kyle Guy. Kyle Guy won the Virginia championship, and I was like, I want to see where Kyle Guy goes. And then Jeremy JX Remy, we were talking about this exact thing like a couple episodes ago, where it was like, where do all these like NCAA guys like end up? So I was like, I was obsessed with Kyle Guy during the championship. I haven't heard of his name since. Let me look him up real quick. And we found out that he's playing like some third string like overseas, like not relevant like whatsoever anymore. And it's like, man, he was like draining threes and free throws during that game against Texas Tech. Like,
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Like with that game, the big names there were DeAndre Hunter and Jared Culver. And obviously Hunter's been good, but I think honestly the second best player that came from that was Ty Jerome, Virginia's point guard. He's over with Golden State now,
Yeah.
gets quality minutes and plays pretty well. So it's like you said, you never know what's going to come of it. That's why I always like to keep a lookout for like these underrated guys, because I mean, hell, although he's probably in jail now for himself, but Bryn Forbes, that guy was
Yeah.
undrafted, and all of a sudden, for a while, was starting for the Spurs, carved out a role on a championship team. I mean,
Yeah.
you love to see it.
I mean, I retweeted that thing with Brent Forbes, like not to make light of it or like joke about it, but I retweeted something that said, "What's more crazy about Brent Forbes? The fact that he did what he did, or the fact that he was dating Elsa Jean?"
I was talking, I was talking to a couple friends. I was like, there was a lot to process in that tweet. I read the first thing; it was like NBA star Bryn Forbes. I was like, whoa. Bryn Forbes is a star? Then I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
Bryn got arrested? Whoa, Bryn's dating a porn star?
Yeah, exactly. I
I was
was
like, it was almost too much to process.
Yeah, and then like it was funny because we have like this huge NBA group chat on Instagram, and it's just funny like because it's from a lot of people all over the world, and so it's just like the different like knowledge that like some people have. Because like there was a few people in there that were like, who the fuck is Elsa Jean, who the fuck is Brent Forbes, and then you have the other half that was like, how do you not know who Elsa Jean is, she's a go-to on the hub. And like just shit like that of like they're arguing about the like not only the relevance of Brent Forbes but also the relevance of the other person as well.
Yeah, I was reading that. I was like, damn, this does not look good.
Yeah.
But yeah, come on, Bryn. You can't do that shit to somebody, no matter how mad you get about their OnlyFans.
Yeah.
You can't lay your hands on them. Come on.
Yeah. So anything else on like March Madness? We sort of talked about upsets already. I wanted to talk about the Marquise Noel. We sort of dived into that. You said you're watching Kansas, which is ironic because of last year. But
Look, man, we beat Duke in the Final Four, and I said a prayer and I said, look, if I get anything this year, just give me this, and I got it. So I can't be mad. But hey,
Yeah.
Carolina was what 3 points from a title, and they were up 15 and a half. I mean.
yeah,
After the start of that season, I couldn't complain, but Kansas in particular is interesting because, I mean, they lost so many players. I mean, they lost McCormick, they lost Agbaji, Remy Martin, they lost him, and, their spark off the bench. The big guy that returned was Jalen Wilson. He's had an amazing season. Grady Dick is so much more than what people are saying he is. Yeah, yes, he is one of the best shooters in the class, but like I'm still not sold that that's all he's going to be in the
Yeah.
league. He's just showed so much IQ, and I'm not a big Bill Self fan myself, but I got to give him credit here. I mean, he's done a really good job at kind of keeping that cohesiveness with this team. I mean, they were down bad against Baylor at the half the other day. I think they were down like 18, and they came back in the second half to win by like 15 or 16. I mean, I think they only
Yeah.
gave up something like 19 points in that second half. It was like stifling defense, just the ball's just hopping around, and I mean, it was beautiful to watch. So I mean, he's done a great job getting them back into form and all that. Yeah, a couple tough losses, but they're on the road. You know, if they got that home crowd behind them and they can get a 1 seed, keep it in their region close to home, I think they got as good a shot as
Yeah.
anybody.
And that's like I'm glad you like brought up like the fact that they lost so many players, because that's what to me sometimes makes, like, honestly, as even though I don't watch college as much as NBA, because not all the time, they're televised, and like the times that they play sometimes, sometimes they'll fucking play at noon, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of class or something. But
And then you never know, like with TV deals, it'll be like a
yeah.
mid-major game or colleges you've never heard of, and
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is like at the end of the day, it's still college. So it's like you're gonna get like as crazy as NBA trades are, which we're about to get into. Like all the colleges are gonna lose their seniors at the end of the year. They're gonna get new freshmen. So it's like a team, like you were just talking about UNC, and not to like dog on UNC, but like college is a revolving door of players, because again, it is college. You're gonna get these people leaving, you're gonna get more people joining, and then your juniors become seniors. You're gonna lose those players next year. So it's a constant revolving door, which keeps it entertaining. And that's not even to mention other things that I've brought up in the past that I love seeing in college basketball more than the NBA, which is me personally, and I know that like some people may agree on this, some people may disagree on this. To me, college basketball is a lot more competitive, like especially in March Madness, because me personally, I see a lot more defense in NCAA basketball than I see in the NBA. I see crazier plays being drawn. I see more involvement of the coaches. There's that. We're gonna also talk about load management possibly this episode. That's goes into that. Like players have a lot more control in the NBA versus in college. It's like you listen to your coach. Your coach knows what he's doing. You better listen to him. You're not this hot shot all-star that can do whatever he wants. You're still a college kid. You need to listen to your coach. And again, that goes into the craziness of plays. And the defense is like a whole argument on its own, but I love seeing defense in college basketball. And one of my favorite plays that I will always remember in college basketball is, I forget which game it was, but they had, it was like 10 seconds left on the clock or something like that, and they had to inbound the ball. And to confuse the defense about who they were going to inbound the ball to, they had all 5 players on the baseline. And then you remember that? And then whenever
yeah, I don't know which game it is, but I remember I have seen that a couple times from teams.
Yeah, and I forget who the first person to do it was, but I remember like seeing that for like the first time, and I'm like, I fucking love that, like the ingenuity of that play, of just like, okay, as soon as the ref blows the whistle to inbound the ball, y'all are all gonna sprint, and then whoever's open is who we pass it to, but
and like to your point, like I always tell people, I love watching college basketball over the NBA. Sometimes I love the NBA. I think one of the reasons it feels more competitive is because players are worse. You get up there, it's like the analogy I tell people. In fact, I was telling my girlfriend, we drove down to Atlanta to go watch the Spurs play the Hawks with Clan down there, and she was talking about crap. Like it's a lot faster in person than I thought, and I was just like, yeah, it's the relativity of it all. When you get all these super fast players on a court together, and you're watching on TV, nobody seems that fast because they're all fast.
Yeah.
But then you put them on a college stage, and there's a lot slower guys and less talent,
Yeah.
and it stands out. And I will say, there is nothing like the NBA playoffs. I love. I'll watch some marquee matchups, NBA regular seasons. I keep up with the Spurs, but I love the NBA playoffs because, like you said, it's when like teams are ready to buckle down. You don't have to worry so much about like resting for the next 3 months. You can go all out because if you lose, you're done.
Yeah.
And college keeps it interesting with the single elimination format. That's why I always love the tournament because anybody can beat anybody. But I will say, like even last year, we had some series where it was just like, whoa! I mean, the Mavs and the Suns. Who would have thought we'd see the Mavs come out and just thrash them in that Game 7?
Yeah.
Phoenix had like the best record in the league. I was like, what the heck's going on? And stuff like that. So there's those moments, but yeah, there's a lot more unknown about college basketball per se.
Yeah.
And yeah, just with the new faces that come in, and there's not as much of like, I mean, you mentioned North Carolina. It's not like North Carolina is going to get a better player in a draft because they're not good
Yeah,
this
exactly.
year. It's up to their coach to go recruit them. So it's
Yeah.
like an endless push, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and like this is sort of tangential to your point, but like I had an argument a couple weeks or months ago when TCU was playing Georgia, and everybody was like watching the game, and this guy, I was like, man, put on the basketball game. Like TCU's getting blown out. Like why are we even watching this? And they were like, they were like, I don't care if TCU. Or, this was like in the break room at work. So I was like, they were like, I don't care if TCU's getting beat. We're keeping it on football. Football is king down here. And I like busted out some stats to them because like they were like talking about how popular like football is and everything. And I live in Texas, so you can imagine. But and everybody
in Texas for 22 years. I know exactly what you mean.
And everybody like always tells me like like, oh, you would be more popular if you like did a football podcast instead of a basketball podcast. But football doesn't interest me. So like I busted out the stats to them because they were like, football is king, don't you know? Like football is the most popular sport, like especially in college. Don't you know that? And I was like, you do realize that basketball makes up 80% of the NCAA's budget. So not only does football not make up 20%, all of the sports combined only make up 20%, and basketball is 80 fucking percent of the NCAA's views and profits.
Yeah, college basketball is great, man. I mean, I love college football too. I love professional football, but it's just what I tell people with like football. Look at it. It's been like the same 4 teams that have won this championship over the last few years, and you know who's going to be good. I mean, the last few, who would have picked North Carolina to be in the championship last year at all? I mean, heck, we may have someone. For all we know, Providence could be in the national championship this year, and all. And it's kind of nice to have that. At least for people I knew, they were keeping the game on. I knew a lot of people that went to TCU. They're like, we don't care. We're getting killed, but we never expected to see our team in the national championship. So we're just going to enjoy it while we got it.
And that's what makes it so great, man, because like we keep going back to like the same thing that like this season is just like so crazy. And like that's just the beauty of the NCAA tournament and the single elimination, because my dad, my dad's almost 50 now, so like you can consider him an old head of basketball. But no, I've told him that plenty of times. He doesn't care. He back on like the OG days of this podcast, whenever I had him on for an episode, we were like debating, like, because he was like an old head, I wanted to sort of have like an old generation versus new generation discussion. And I was like, who is the greatest of all time? And he said Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, but he said he was annoyed that Michael Jordan was the greatest of all time. And he like tried to explain it where he was like, it made basketball like after so many years, you know, it was great to see the athleticism of Michael Jordan because he was the greatest of all time. But by the end of the three-peat, like, he started to hate it because he was like, it became predictable. You know, you could ask anybody on the set. Yeah, he was like, you could ask anybody on the sidewalk who's gonna win the finals. It was always Jordan, Michael Jordan, and like you said with the Warriors, it's like who do you think is a contender this year? And it's like now it's always the Bucks or the Warriors, like.
Yeah.
You know, but with the NCAA, with like how crazy it is, and again that revolving door of freshmen and seniors, it's always unpredictable, and that's what makes it great. Is like you can't just, I mean, you still sort of can because again, like there are these schools that put a majority of their budget into like the basketball program, so they're always gonna sort of be up there like Duke and UNC, but you know, like it's never.
This year.
Yeah, but like you can point to the schools that are always gonna sort of be like top 10, and like they put a lot of
expectations.
Yeah, but you can't even with all that said, you can say, oh, this team's gonna be top 10, this team's gonna be top 5, but you can't definitely point at a team and be like, that's gonna be the winner. Like you can't do that. Definitely not this year. You can't couldn't do that the past few years, I don't think. Where you just like know a team is like that team's gonna be the winner, you know.
Yeah, the only team I can think of the last few years that I just like knew they were gonna win it. Obviously, I'm a fan, but 2009 North Carolina, I was like, this is their year. They lost in the Final Four last year. They're getting it this year. I mean, that entire starting five made the NBA, although not all of them are there still. But like, yeah, that was one of the most dominant runs I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But
unfortunately, I'm too young to remember that. So I was only 7 during that, so I can't attest. But
yeah, they won every game by basically just about 18 to 20 points. Like that, their margin of victory was huge. I mean, it was Michigan State had a miracle run up there to the top, and then they just took a shit on them through that championship game, which I was happy about. I wanted them to win, but.
Oh yeah, I've made a lot of people mad on the podcast because I said I told my dad I wanted more college shirts for Christmas, so I could so like, you know, like I could seem like I support more teams because I do, you know. I don't want to seem like I only watch Texas teams, you know. Like I watched the MSU versus Michigan game, but that's exactly where I'm going with this. Is I made a lot of people mad because I wore a Michigan State shirt one day, and then a couple days later I wore a Michigan shirt, and then even my mom, who doesn't watch sports, was like, "Nah, you gotta pick a fucking side." She was like,
I can get you. Granted, it's again the pick a side thing, but man, up here I can get you Duke, I can get you Carolina, I can get you NC State if you want one of each.
Yeah, but like she was like that's the Civil War out there. Like you gotta pick a side of Michigan. But I think I will say this. For all y'all people watching in Michigan, I don't know how many viewers I'll have on this, but if by chance there is a Michigan viewer out there, I will say that if I had to pick one, it would be Michigan State. I like the green Spartans more than I like the yellow M. So.
Plus, Michigan State's got Izzo.
Yeah. But sometimes whenever it's hard for me to like pick, sometimes I'll just go based off like mascots, even though like that's like the lame thing to do. Like I'll just be like, yeah, I like this. I think the Spartans are cooler. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair.
Like that's what sometimes I'll do that with like people. This is getting too much into my personal life, but sometimes I'll do that with like people that I'm like flirting with or stuff like that. Like I'll like let them know I'm into basketball or into sports or something like that, and I'll ask them like, you know, like, do you keep up with any teams or something like that? And they'll be like, I forget like what teams that they mentioned, but they'll say something like, "Oh, I like this team because their mascot's purple," like, you know, just something completely random that doesn't have to do with basketball like at all. They'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I like their cute mascot." Which, to be fair, I did that in 2019 with Virginia and I won. I was like, I like their sword logo. I like that they're called the Cavaliers. It's pretty cool, and they ended up winning. So.
see, yeah, you got to do that this year. I'm not sure who the coolest mascot name is in the top 25. We'll have to figure it out.
All right, so I think that kind of wraps up our March Madness talk. We spent about 30 minutes on it, so we'll go ahead and get into trade stuff, which I did like a whole episode on, not last week, but last episode. And then we'll get into like load management talk if we have time. So I've already given my opinions on the KD trade and the Kyrie trades and all the other stuff because, again, I did a full episode on it. But I want to sort of get your thoughts on it, and then I'll chime in if I have anything else to add that I didn't say last episode. So do you want to start off with KD trade? Do you want to start out with the Kyrie trade? What direction do you want to take this? I'll leave this up to you.
Let's go KD trade. Let's take the big kahuna right
All
away.
right. A lot of people found my take controversial because I said that even with the KD trade, I don't see the Suns making it out of the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm going to have to see him play with him first. I mean, we still haven't seen a single minute, so I have no idea. But
it's like his fourth
least
game
like-
out tonight, right, or something like that. That's what I saw on
I
ESPN.
think they were saying they're planning for him to, like, return as early as Sunday, maybe
Yeah.
Wednesday or something like that. But I'll say this. I think that may be the craziest trade I have ever seen.
Yeah,
In terms of, like, star level player, because KD is like one of the greatest players of all time. In terms of like pure talent and what he brings. And I mean, you don't see those kind of guys traded very often. I mean, James Harden being dealt to the Nets was a blockbuster deal, but even still, he's not KD's level. Like,
yeah.
that's nuts. And
It would be like if
I-
Milwaukee all of a sudden traded away like Giannis.
yeah, exactly. And I was just, I guess Brooklyn probably had to sit down and talk with him and
Yeah,
figure out what he wanted. I was kind of shocked they traded him that soon. I thought they might try to keep it going or something, but I guess he was hell bent on
Yeah.
getting out of there now that Kyrie was gone and all that, and they just wanted to rebuild.
Yeah.
But hated it for Mikal Bridges because that guy, has he missed a single game for Phoenix in his entire career?
Yeah, there was a bunch of tweets about that like they he hasn't missed a single game, and then I saw some people were like StatMuse had posted that like, oh, he hasn't missed a single game, and then somebody screenshotted like, oh, he only had 72 games in the 2020 season, and it's like, did you forget that like what happened in 2020,
Yeah,
like that
totally.
whole year? Like there's a reason it's only 72 games. But
he's given it all. I love Mikal Bridges. I loved him in the draft.
yeah.
I couldn't believe Philly traded him for Zaire Smith
Yeah.
in that draft. Also, do you remember all the like drama around that trade initially?
Which one again?
So Philly drafted Mikal Bridges
Mm-hmm.
and then trades him for Zaire Smith and I think like a future pick or something. I mean, Mikal went to Villanova, which is in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He's from that area. His mom was working for the Sixers at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thrilled they just drafted her son, and like before he even can sit down after getting the hat on, they ship him off to Phoenix.
Damn, bro.
But like, hey, he got to go to a finals there.
Yeah.
And like, I think we were having this conversation the other day. I was like, damn, especially before they traded Jay Crowder. I was like, man, Brooklyn has like all my favorite 3-and-D guys with like,
Yeah.
even though Mikal's more than that, but Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder,
Yeah.
all those guys wrapped into one. Yeah, I mean, if it works out, Phoenix is going to be a really good team, and it'll be interesting to see what Brooklyn does if those picks don't end up being that good. The only reason I'm really wary is just because it seems like whenever teams dole out lots of picks like this, it just doesn't work out ever.
Yeah.
I mean, Brooklyn's done it twice.
Yeah, and that's
we've
that's
seen that, and the Clippers have done it. And while the Clippers are very good and hoping for a title, I'm just like, look at what OKC's adding. They got Shea in that trade. But the biggest thing I noticed about that was someone brought up trades of the past
yeah.
and how different they are now, that like teams do not want players in return, they want picks.
Yeah.
And how much it's changed, that they want future assets rather than present assets. That's like a new mentality. And that
I
was a lot of picks.
I was gonna talk on that point about like more people wanting picks, especially Brooklyn. And one reason that we were talking a little bit before I pressed go live. You said you had you have a video, I think you said, coming out, or at least you had a talk with Clan about what classifies a win in a trade. And a lot of people, especially because, again, KD is such an amazing player going to Phoenix, I said that I think Brooklyn actually did better in the trade. And obviously, that is going to get a big reaction out of a lot of people considering that Phoenix just got KD. But let's establish where Brooklyn is at, okay? Oh, we just got a new follower. Thank you very much.
Hell yeah.
Thank you to Ash949.
Well, before you say, I will say there is something to that because, like, they're talking about teams like the Grizzlies were offering up to 4 firsts for Mikal Bridges. And you think, and this is not to say he's on KD's level, but what did they get, like 6 picks for KD and something?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, okay, if KD's value was like a player in 6 picks and then people were willing to throw salary matcher and 4 picks for this guy, obviously they're not the same player. KD's way better, but I'm like, man, that's good value there, and you got a couple role players. And I think the big thing I look at with there is, and what I wonder that Brooklyn will do, is they're probably figuring that those picks aren't going to be worth much if KD lives up to potential and the team works. But Brooklyn has and will be a huge free agent destination. So, like, they could go out and get some guys that are like big names to come in and join this team with these. I mean, none of these guys are particularly old. I think Bridges is what, 26, 25, 26, something like that.
I think 26, because my brain
of Johnson, like 27. I mean, they're not young per se, but they're definitely not old. They're just entering their primes.
Yeah.
And if you can get a free agent young star to come join there and you have room to pay them.
Yeah,
I don't see why they couldn't be just as good soon.
My big point was, think about how much they lost for KD. And, like, again, this huge blockbuster trade of, like, they traded away so many picks to have Kyrie, Harden, and KD. Harden already left. They knew Kyrie was leaving, and they knew that if Kyrie left, they would probably lose KD. So, obviously, the best thing for them to do would to keep KD. But that's out of the cards. So, again, I'm looking at this from a stance of, these are the cards you have. How do you play them the best that you can? And the best thing that they could do was come out net positive and basically accumulate the loss that they took. And that's exactly what they did. And that's why I say they did amazing with this trade, because they basically got back as many picks as they lost for KD. So they basically, like, just turned so, like, they gave away so many picks to get KD, and they just got all those picks back so they can basically just redo it. And, like, it's like pressing the undo button. And those picks, just like you said, creates a lot of flexibility, because either they can use those picks as picks and draft people, or they can do exactly what they did with KD and with everybody being a free agent nowadays, sort of trade those picks to get somebody again. And that was like a major point I brought up, is like picks is basically like flexibility to teams now. Like, they can either use them or they can trade them away. And to your point of, like, everybody wants picks now, I think that's just because at the end of the day, like, again, I'm getting older, my dad's getting older, like, you're getting older, like, the league as well is also getting older. Like, we are slowly, and this is a video I've had in my drafts for so long that I still have not posted. The end of an era for the NBA is coming soon, whether we it or not. LeBron's going to be gone. KD's going to be gone. All these, amazing players that are getting up into their 30s are going to be gone. Steph's going to be gone. James Harden's going to be gone. And we're going to have to sort of come around the new era, which is going to be, Luka, Jason Tatum isn't that
Yeah,
he's not that
Chris
old, but
Tatum,
he's not young either.
Giannis,
He's sort of in the middle.
Jokic,
Yeah, this new.
Shea, Ja Morant, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. John Morant is another good one. Like these young players that are really, already all stars, and because of that, I think these teams are realizing that, and they're like, okay, we can't just go out and get, well, Phoenix did obviously, but we can't go out and get KD. We can't go out and get LeBron because they're going to be gone in like 2 to 3 years. We need to hunker down and realize that we need to plan for the next 5 to 10 years when all of these players are out of the league and everything like that. And we need to start developing a younger core. As bad as the Spurs are right now, we've sort of gotten a head start with that because our era already ended with losing Tim Duncan and all of our players. So we sort of already had a head start on that where it's like, okay, we need to start the new era, start a new young core, everything like that. And then the Rockets have also been doing that, even though they've also been doing bad, where they're like, okay, we're losing Harden, but we're getting Jalen Green. We're going to coach up all of these guys. We're going to mold them. OKC is the same way. They're like, okay, we don't have KD anymore. We don't have Paul George. We don't have Russell Westbrook. Let's start getting Shy, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren. He's going to start playing soon because he just got recovered from his injury. These teams that have already lost these huge players sort of already have a head start on that, where it's like it would be the equivalent of like them retiring because they're leaving your franchise. They're sort of regressing into the new era that is soon going to be upon us in the next 5 years or so, give or take.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the turnover of teams, how they go, because yes, I wonder this offseason what'll happen with like Draymond Green in Golden State.
Yeah.
Does he leave or does he stay? And then Golden State, I'm for this. I kind of didn't understand why they were tanking to take James Wiseman and then Kuminga and Moody and all that. I always thought they were going to tank when all those guys were injured and trade that pick immediately to bring in like another star.
Yeah.
And all that. I never thought they were going to keep Wiseman. And at least my feeling on them and like my feeling with the Suns, where I support these kinds of trades, is like the Warriors. If you have a guy like Steph Curry and he is playing at this freaking level at this stage in his career, you go down with that ship.
Yeah.
It's impossible to gun for a championship and rebuild at the same time.
Yeah.
And it always bugged me, like back when the Spurs transitioned to it was Kawhi Leonard's team. People would say, oh, we're rebuilding at the same time when we drafted DeJounte Murray and Derek White. No, we weren't. We hit on 29th overall picks, but I mean, the guys playing in there, it was Kawhi, it was LaMarcus Aldridge. 2 days after Duncan retires, we go add the like second premier free agent of that class. Durant was number one. He goes to Golden State. We snag Pau Gasol.
Yeah.
We have Tony still playing there. We had Jonathan Simmons as an older guy playing well off the bench. Danny Green's still there. He's a vet. It's all these guys. Kyle Anderson comes in and he's playing a little bit of a role, but it was not like we were rebuilding. Because you just can't. And this idea that guys like Wiseman, who is very raw, and Kuminga, the same thing, and Moody can develop while not playing significant minutes is nuts. That's where I said we aren't rebuilding. We threw DeJounte in the G League for a while. We threw Derek in the G League for a while. Same with Lonnie Walker. None of them are with the team anymore, but they got their minutes in there because we had other guys who were better at their spots. And that's the thing with Golden State is they had those three guys, a couple of guys taking up roster spots who just weren't playing. And I never understood why you don't just go all in on that title right now instead of having these guys rot on the bench because they can't contribute immediately
Yeah.
to any wins, but they also can't learn if they're sitting there. And that's where I will say I applaud Phoenix for taking the plunge and saying, hey, this season wasn't going the way we want. We had this opportunity to get this once in a lifetime player. Let's get him. Let's see what we can do. We got Chris Paul for maybe 2 years, 3 years, depending on how his health holds out. Devin Booker's playing the best ball of his career. DeAndre Ayton looks revitalized the last few games. Like, gives us a chance to get rid of Jay Crowder since he still doesn't want to play with us. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
I can say that I love what Brooklyn got, but I also think, like, I mean, come on, man. Like, if the Spurs were like the 5th seed and they had a chance to go get KD, I'd be like, fuck it, let's try it. Like,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's go win a title. So I cannot fault them for that move.
Yeah. I think it's crazy too, like how sort of the Spurs culture with that has changed a little bit because of the position we're in. Because, it was always this huge thing that, like, it was a saying for a while, at least while I was growing up in San Antonio, that the Spurs never make trades. Like,
Yep.
it was always a culture of, like, if you're in San Antonio, you're in San Antonio. Like, we never make trades. We're not a trading team, and now sort of with this quote unquote like rebuild and like everything like that, everybody was so scared to make trades for a while because of how many have turned out bad, like the James Harden one.
How close the standings were.
Yeah,
That's one
and
thing I brought up because, like, if you trade away a rotation player for somebody and it fails,
yeah,
sheesh. I mean, the difference in the standings, it's like a 5-game difference between the 13 seed and the 2 seed in the West. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
But like with the Rudy Gobert trade especially, everybody was like, "Oh, the Timberwolves, like they just got freaking Gobert to add with Cat and Anthony Edwards. Like they have like some of the 3 best big men in the league aside from, KD and Jokic and Embiid and Giannis." And but everybody now is like, okay, Gobert's getting paid too much in Minnesota. He's not doing that much. He's taking stats away from the other 2 big guys, and like that sort of scared people. And then all of a sudden this season, it's like everybody's scared to make trades because of that. The Spurs have never been a trade team, but who are the first people to make a trade? San Antonio. And then after San Antonio makes a trade, the floodgates open, and we have the Kyrie trade and the KD trade and all this other stuff. But San Antonio was like one of the first people, if I remember, to make a trade on deadline day. And obviously, it wasn't for like anybody big like KD or Kyrie, but still. And with the whole thing of DeJounte and Derek White, we were not a trading team for so long because our development staff is still one of the most like undisputed greatest development staff like of all time. Like we develop players. Kawhi on his draft report was a set, like one of the things that was on Kawhi's draft report was like he has amazing defense, but he can't shoot at all. Yeah. And now like we made him one of the like most elite and scariest like dead-eye shooters like of all time. Not of all time, I won't say that, but
look at Sohan. Look at his
yeah, Sohan. Yeah. And so it's crazy that, like, we sort of turned into a trade team because, again, you look at DeJounte and you look at Derek White. We put them in the G League for a little bit, and then because of circumstances, we have to trade them away, It's like putting your guy in, like, an RPG, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna level this guy from, like, level 10 to, like, level 25, and then I'm gonna give you the controller. It's like we're developing them for you, and then we're giving them to someone else, But obviously, like, it's not like we're Some trades
the
are
idea
out
is
of our
that
control,
they cap
but
out at level 20,
yeah,
and we're getting a guy that can go to level 40.
yeah.
Instead, so
But still, it's just crazy to me that like we trade these guys and we sort of buff them up for other teams in a sense. But you are correct in like it's the sense that we are getting them to their cap, and then if you like their cap, you can have them. But we'd rather have somebody with a higher ceiling type of thing because the Spurs will get them to their ceiling, whatever that is.
let me ask. We talked about the KD trade. What was your favorite trade that you saw that you were just like, oh damn, that's a good move?
Um, let me pull up my notes of what I said of
Yeah, the
the
problem
trade.
is there are like a billion.
Yeah,
I'll
that's what
give
I'm
a
saying. Let
shout
me
out
check real quick.
to my
So,
one friend who works in the NBA, and I was like, "What's going on, man? Like the trade deadline stuff." He's like, "Yeah, teams are scared because it's so competitive right now. They
yeah,
don't want to
exactly.
screw up what they've built." He's like, "But I'll tell you one thing: once that first deal goes through, I feel like hell is
Exactly. The
just gonna
fucking
overflow." I
floodgates.
was like, "Nah," and then all of a sudden, let's
It's
look up list of.
what's crazy to me is that I didn't like just like you said everybody was scared. I didn't like a lot of the trades that were made. I don't think I gave anybody an A. I think I gave everybody a B plus at most. Let me see. Um I gave the
I'll
Suns. I
say
gave the Suns an A minus because they got KD. I gave the Bucks an A minus for getting Jay Crowder. Um, let's see here. I can tell you some of the ones I hated the most. I can't tell you which ones I liked the
yeah.
most.
Which ones did you hate the most?
Um, Mo Bamba for Pat Bev.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Although he's played better lately, but
Mm-hmm.
I saw a tweet and I agree. The idea of Mo Bamba is better than what you actually get with
Yeah,
Mo Bamba.
that's exactly. Oh, I accidentally have my notes up on screen so people can actually read them. But I guess that's actually good that you can see
Hopefully,
my
he's not
thought.
just like slandering anyone. Like I fucking hate this guy. He's
Nah, but uh,
I loved the
I
Josh
talked
Hart trade
about
for New York. I don't understand what Portland was doing
yeah.
this deadline.
I talked about basically I said like you said the Mo Bamba idea, and I sort of tried to explain myself as best I could. I was like there should have been at least cash considerations for that because like Mo Bamba's jersey without a doubt is probably one of uh the higher selling jerseys of the Magic over the last couple of years just simply
Yeah,
because of the song and like off court influences. You know what I mean? So it's like there should have been cash considerations for that just because of like the capital that he brings in. Um, what was another one I hated? Let's see. Who did I
I kind
give?
of hated that Golden State immediately traded away Sadiq Bey to Atlanta in that James Wiseman deal. I
Oh
thought it
yeah,
was a
let me
good
go to
get for
that.
Atlanta, but I thought he was a perfect fit with the Warriors.
Okay, so I don't know if you watched my last episode on trades, but I'll read my notes for what I said for the Warriors trade. I said Gary Payton II already has experience with the Warriors and was able to perform for them when he was there. Wiseman, on the other hand, was always seen as a work in progress with a high ceiling. It seems the Pistons were willing to take that gamble on molding Wiseman while the Warriors gave up. The Warriors in turn got a lot of picks. With it being the Warriors, they're not needed. They're not needed picks because they're contenders year after year. However, in getting Wiseman in the gamble, they had to give up Sadiq Bey. Giving up Sadiq Bey can go either way, as he was one of the Pistons' better players. However, it opens up opportunities for Marvin Bagley III, who I made a video on how he complements Cade Cunningham's play, and the duo can help propel the Pistons if Marvin Bagley gets more minutes together. However, they still have Jalen Duren and now Wiseman, who will take minutes from Marvin Bagley III, so that trade sort of evens out their minutes, so it doesn't matter. With
You
Jalen
know why
Duren,
I hated it for the Warriors?
what's up?
Because here's why I thought this was just stupid for the Warriors. I didn't have a problem trading Wiseman, but you trade him and bring in Gary Payton II.
Hmm.
Yeah, he knows the system, but you had a chance to bring him back this offseason, and he
Yeah.
was willing to come back, but you didn't want to pay him. You thought you could get by without him. And to me, it's just, I'm incredulous that they go and trade away an asset to bring him back when they could have had him and the asset to trade at deadline.
Yeah.
And then I thought for sure Bay would be the guy to get because he's a solid defender, good
Yeah.
shooter. He can play that kind of combo 3-4 spot. And then they just dealt him away too for multiple second round picks. And then we find out Peyton is injured and Portland didn't
Yeah.
disclose a whole bunch of stuff. So I just hated that deal all the way around for Golden State. Not necessarily because they dealt Wiseman, but just the context surrounding it.
Yeah. I basically like I talked about the Pistons a lot in the trade because like they have to develop now they have to develop Jalen Duren and Wiseman.
Kind of like the Sixers back in the day with all those centers down there.
Yeah, and they play like similar positions, so it's it's it'll be interesting to see how they develop both of them like at the same time.
I've
What
seen a lot
is
of Pistons fans really wanting them to run Wiseman at the power forward next to
yeah.
Duran. I don't know how that'll work.
I want to see again, like I said, I want to see Marvin Bagley III play more with Cade Cunningham, and
Yeah, well, and that's the problem with Detroit this year is Cade shut down, so you don't. It's hard. Killian Hayes has had a decent
yeah,
season, but he's not Cade Cunningham level, and it's just
yeah,
hard with all these bigs who are off-ball role guys and stuff like that to play with a guy who can't get them the ball well off
yeah,
of the pick like Cade. I mean, Duran's going to become infinitely more valuable once Cade comes back,
yeah,
but I just can't help feeling. I know people are very high. I'll admit, maybe this is just my bias because I wasn't a huge Wiseman guy when he was drafted.
mm-hmm.
I felt like he was more of a Hassan Whiteside than he was an Anthony Davis. And I'd love to be proven wrong because he seems like a good kid and he works. But I just feel like he's kind of redundant to Duran and that Duran's
yeah,
going to have that higher upside with being younger and all this stuff. And that Bagley's more mobile and has more of an outside game that can complement that. So
yeah.
it was just kind of a bizarre three-team deal altogether.
I'm glad you brought up the mobility because that's exactly what I was like talking about like in my video. Like it's one of my like higher view videos now, but I talked about how when Marvin Bagley went to the Pistons, both people got exactly what they wanted. Marvin Bagley was getting something with the Pistons that the Kings couldn't give him, and Cade Cunningham was getting something with Marvin Bagley. And the way that they just complement each other with the way that they like move each other around is amazing. And I even put up like highlights on the like to compare. I was like, look at what Marvin Bagley is doing with the Kings. All he does is sit under the rim and wait for rebounds. Versus with
Yep.
with the Pistons, he's doing these pick and roll plays with Cade Cunningham. He's actually using his size with like he's actually what a power forward does. You know,
Yep.
um,
Yeah, that always bothered me in college too. Eh, it's tough because he's down there next to Wendell Carter and all that, but
mhm,
like even so, it just felt like they tried to run the game through their guards, and he just kind of became rebound fodder. And yeah, he still averaged 20 points a game in college, but a lot of those is just his supreme athleticism, getting that second bounce off the board and dunking it in. But then I'd see him out on the perimeter, and I'm like, I mean, this guy can handle. He can. It was interesting because in high school, I saw him being billed as a KD like prospect,
mhm,
and that's not how anybody used him at all until he
yeah,
got to Detroit. And he's not as good as KD, but he has a natural ability and a feel for the game. And I feel like playing with a guy like Cunningham, I mean, Bagley's basketball smart too. He knows what he's
yeah,
doing. I feel like playing with another guy like that in Cade, like you said, it just unlocks so much from him. And he's played the best basketball of his career in Detroit. And I'd hate to see that like regress just because they want to take a chance on another guy with potential who I still don't think his potential is as high as Bagley's could be,
yeah.
even if Bagley is older. But I don't know. That might just be me.
Yeah, man. I agree 100%. We are getting at about an hour here, so I'll leave it up to you because I know it's already like almost midnight over there. Um, do you want to cut it here, or do you want to talk about load management for a little bit?
Hey, let's talk a little bit about load management.
So,
Let's
I
we're gonna talk about people sitting out. So if I'm gonna say, hey, y'all need to work, I gotta work too. So let's do it.
yeah. um, So I saw that again. I told Swisheel before we pressed go live that it's ironic that I wanted to talk about load management, and as I'm getting my haircut this morning, they're like talking about load management on ESPN, and Kendrick Perkins made like this weird comment where he said the Spurs are the ones who started load management with Tim Duncan in the playoffs, and I was like. I hate that he's taking a dig at the Spurs, but I think the thing that I hate more is that he's not technically wrong.
Yeah,
And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
it's a little bit yes and a little bit no. The Spurs are definitely kind of the pioneers of like the whole rest thing. Where like,
Yeah.
look, we got back to backs. Let's rest. Let's not exacerbate it. But they did not do it super excessively. What we're
Hmm.
seeing now, I mean, aside from like the season where Kawhi Leonard sat out and then left. I mean, let me pull up his games played here.
All right. Well, you pull that up. I'll say my thoughts on it are like, I'm on the fence about load management. I get what people are complaining about because Anthony Edwards had that quote where he was saying like you're getting if you're gonna get paid to play then play, and he made an incredible point that's like some people only have tickets to go to one game, and then you're
Yeah,
not gonna play, and that sort of hit me as well because I know a lot of people in San Antonio right now that can't afford. Well, I mean they probably can now because the Spurs are losing, so ticket sales are down. But they can't afford to go to all these Spurs games. Me and my dad only go to one game a year, and it's sort of our Christmas tradition. We always go to a game in January, and want our Christmas gift to each other every Christmas is tickets to the Spurs game.
yeah.
Um, and ironically, like we don't plan this. It's just somehow the way it's worked out. Every game that we've gone to, like the last 3 or 4 years, has been against the Warriors. Just out of pure coincidence, like every January game that we go to is like Warriors at Spurs. But like the last couple times we went, and this doesn't have to do with load management. It has to do more with injuries. But it's like, oh, cool, we're playing against the Warriors, and Clay's out, and Steph is out, and it's like, but that's not really load management. That had to deal with the fact that Steph and Clay were injured for a majority of the last couple of seasons. But it goes to that point of like, you're paying to come watch these incredible people, and they don't come to play. However, the reason I'm on the fence is because I also see the other side with the fact that that's just sort of sports. That's a business at the end of the day. Like you have to do what you have to do to like to win, and like it comes down to strategy, and it's like, okay, this is our best player. We have to decide, like, is this game worth losing? And if it is, can we sit our best guys so that they win the next game? And that sort of thing. It's like at the end of the day, it's strategy. It's a business. They're gonna do what they have to do, and they're going to sit their best guys if it means winning later, especially with the playoffs coming up. But the problem I have is whenever it becomes not load management anymore. And what I mean is when it's the players themselves that are deciding it. Like the coaches can be like, okay, I'm gonna sit you this game so that you're good for the next game. But Kendrick Perkins has said, and this has been brought up multiple times, that sooner or later there's going to be a Ben Simmons or James Harden rule where it's like, if you're getting paid millions of fucking dollars to play, you're gonna play. Like, you can't just make passive income when that passive income is like $10 million a game. You know what I mean? And I watched this other podcast that isn't a sports podcast, and they were like debating like certain sports and stuff like that. And this again, this isn't a sports podcast, but he was like, I don't watch basketball because of that. He was like, I haven't seen a sport where the players are more of selfish, lazy asshole. That I'm using his words, okay? This is not me saying this, but he said I don't watch basketball because I have not seen a sport where the players are more selfish assholes than lazy assholes than basketball. He's like, you're getting paid $200 million, and you're like, nah, I just don't really feel like it. I'm just gonna sit out. Take a day off. Because I feel like it. I'm gonna say some bullshit about mental health and just sit on the bench and get paid millions. So
Yeah, it's like I say this, like, yeah, I'm an advocate for looking out for your body,
Yeah.
and everything. And there's a lot these guys have to go through, but it's just like, and obviously, serious injuries are one thing. Like,
yeah,
okay, Kawhi Leonard tore his ACL. I'm not going to begrudge him missing a season for literally not being able to walk
Yeah.
at one point. Like, you got to fix that. But I mean, Kawhi Leonard, when he played with us, 66 games, 67 games, his last two seasons with us, he played 72 and 74, which is a reasonable amount. I think it's reasonable to say, okay, 10 games, you're playing a lot of games. But like, you look at his seasons after that, he sat out willingly and only played 9 the next season. Season after that, he goes to Toronto. He misses 22 games. Season after that with the Clippers, obviously COVID cuts it short, but we played 72 games. I mean, he misses 20 of those. Year after that, 72 games, misses 22 of those. It's to the point where it's like you're missing roughly like 30% of the season. Some of these guys, and Anthony Davis gets ripped, but it's funny because I think he's played more games than both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have played in the last few years. Which and that's just where, like, I get frustrated, especially too with like all-star selections, because if we're looking at like 2020 and 2021, Anthony Davis was named an all-star. He only played in half the games that season.
yeah,
How does that happen?
yeah,
Like, he played 36 games. Yeah, he played really well, averaged 22, 8, and 3, but come on, like, you mean to tell me there isn't someone who played at least 60 games that could have put up those numbers? And we're seeing that this year too. It's just some of the guys that, yeah, it's like, I know you've got to take care of your body, but I feel like the thing they need to focus on is, well, if this is what people are going to do because they think the schedule is too much of a grind, how can we attack that?
yeah,
And it's fining isn't going to do anything. Like you said, these people make hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, a $15,000 fine, sure, they'll pay it if it means they can have a better shot at an NBA title come playoff time. But every time we bring up shortening the season, you get all these people pushing back, especially old heads, talking about like, well, I don't know. We played. It's such a like boomer mentality. We
Yeah.
we played all our games back in the day. I'm like, yeah. Also, look how many people you had get injured
yeah,
trying to play stuff like that, and look at how young people are coming into the league nowadays. And how many and people don't talk about this either, how many years they have on their bodies already at such a young age. I mean, you think of LaMelo Ball. By age 19, he had already played in 2 professional leagues. In Latvia and in Australia. He'd played at these top high schools, AAU ball all summer. I mean, these guys are playing infinitely more games than anybody in the 80s did in high school as part of these grassroots programs, and they come in here with all these mileage on their bodies, and then they're expected to get out there and show out. So yes, it's a problem, but
yeah,
like you said, from the standpoint, I mean, it tore me apart. The last Spurs game I was able to go to in San Antonio was we played the Jazz in the 2015-2016 season. And I was like, had a feeling it'd be Tim Duncan's last year, wanted to see him. And I was like super excited, but Tony Parker and LaMarcus Aldridge didn't play.
Hmm.
I was like, damn, like I got to see like half the guys I wanted to. And then on the Jazz's side, Rudy Gobert didn't play, Gordon Hayward didn't play. I was like what the hell? Who's worth watching on the Jazz right now? They didn't
Yeah.
have Donovan Mitchell yet, I don't think. So it was just like this is. I mean, and the Spurs blew him out, and David West had a great game. So I guess that was fun to see. But I was like, come on, man! Like I want to see Tony Parker. I want to see LaMarcus. I want to see
Yeah.
Manu. I want to see Tim. Those guys. And yeah, so I feel like there's got to be something done
I feel
where
like
there's
there's
mutually
yeah.
beneficial. You can help the guys, and you can also keep that market value for fans up there. Because
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah, I said we drove all the way down to Atlanta. Clan and I were worried to death. We were like, please let Jeremy Sohan play. Please let him play. And like,
Yeah.
thankfully he did, because that was the one guy we wanted to see. But it was like, okay, well, who's going to be sitting out, who's not, and all that stuff. And it's like now a risk to buy tickets to go see a team, because you just
Yeah.
don't know if you're going to be getting what you paid for.
Yeah. It's like I think it's really gonna come down to a compromise, and the question is what that compromise is. Because I'm a huge advocator, with my own mental health. I've taken some breaks off of YouTube because of it, and I've talked about it. Um, I mental is just as important as physical. But
Absolutely.
but the problem is when people try and use that card too much, like Ben Simmons, and like I had said again, like I'm sort of on both sides because I had talked about I made the argument when Klay Thompson came back from injury. I said that the Warriors need to play him less because he came back from injury and he's like, "Oh, I'm back from injury, time to go all out." And then he's doing these crazy windmill dunks, like in like his first 2 games back, and I'm like, "Bro, chill, or you're gonna get injured again."
Yeah,
Like,
we want you to play next year too.
yeah, and I also predicted that, like, again, I don't wish injuries on anybody, but that's exactly why I predicted it. I was like, Luka's gonna get injured, and sure enough, he did, because I said that he was gonna get injured right after he played like 59 minutes in like a 60-minute game or something. He played like
Yeah.
every single minute of like a game, and I came on the podcast and I talked about it, and I was like, he just played 59 out of 60 minutes. I bet you he gets injured in the next week, and he was.
One interesting thing I heard somebody bring up. I can't remember if it's somebody's podcast. I want to give them credit, but I can't remember for the life of me who it was. But they were talking about the potential impact of league expansion on stuff like that. Talking about it was as a result of like Cam Thomas having his like 3 40-point games in a row. They were talking about, dude, this is what the NBA is now. You got a guy sitting on the end of your bench who doesn't play, who comes in, drops 43 games in a row. Like, that's how talented it is. And one of the
Yeah.
guys was talking about, like, they don't buy all the stuff necessarily that any, like, oh, the 80s or this era was more physical or whatever, or that, defenses are better or worse and all that. It's just how offenses adapt and react and all that stuff. Point is, guys were strong then, they're strong now. Guys beat up on each other then, they're beating up on each other now. Just because there's not fights breaking out on the court all the time
Excuse me.
as
Sorry.
compared to then doesn't mean it's not still like a physical game. But he brought up the point that, like, could league expansion help? Like, if you add a couple of these teams and get some of these end of the bench guys out there playing, then you even out teams more, because we're in an era where every team is super deep.
Yeah.
I mean, even the bad teams, like I'm looking at the Spurs, guys we're bringing off our bench right now. I mean, Charles Bassey will put up starters numbers at times. Zach Collins was our backup center at
Yeah.
the start of the year. I mean, it's just nuts to see what some of these guys are capable. I mean, Keldon Johnson was the like third or fourth option at one point a year or two back, and now he's, granted he won't be this in his career, but he's been forced to be our first option, and he's like a 23 point per game scorer
Yeah.
a night. So like even when a bench unit comes in, these guys like Luca are having to, not that I say they should take plays off on the court, but like it's having to be 100%
Yeah.
all the time, and they're out there all the time because these second units are still so good. And he wondered if expanding and evening it out might help with that. I thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting suggestion because I'd never heard that before.
I think what it's gonna come down to is, some players have like a no trade clause, and like they talk about, like there's some negotiations and contracts about like free agency and stuff like that. I think that eventually there's gonna be some sort of like game clause where they're like, you have to, like, injury, like besides injury, you have to play at least 50 games a season and average X amount of minutes per season, or something like that, for you to get paid this amount. And like for every X amount that under that amount of minutes that you have, you get paid like this much less. Like there's
Yeah.
those players that have like those endorsements or like those bonuses that are like, they get paid a base amount of like 50 million, but then like if the team makes the championship, they get like another 10 million, like stuff like that. So it's like do the
I've
same
also
thing but
seen
the
like
opposite.
I've also seen like suggestions, and this, don't get me wrong, I'm like not in favor of this or anything, but it was interesting. I've seen people talk about like restrictions on people in the playoffs if they haven't met a certain number of games in the regular season, without like uh, disclosed injuries.
Yeah.
Not just rest, but if you rest, 30 games a season and it's not technically an injury rehab, like restricting how much you can play in a playoff series or something like that, which I don't know is necessarily the way to go about it, but it's like an interesting way to think. But
Yeah.
it's, Pop actually talked about this the other night in his pregame thing with the Spurs. They were asking him what his thoughts are, and it's kind of like the Donovan Mitchell on John Morant carrying the ball.
Mm.
He's like, we all do it. He's like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just
It's just
how the
basketball.
league
It's
is
sports, like
now.
I
He's
said.
like he's like they've put such a premium value on those titles and everything, and having the best team you can in the playoffs, that teams are going to do whatever it takes. And as
Yeah.
harsh as it sounds, they don't really care about the fan experience. When it's said and done,
Mm.
their thinking is, well, the fans want to see us win a title. If you don't get to see your star player play when you pay money to come see us, would you rather that or would you rather a title? And it's, it
Yeah.
comes down to their jobs on that. So one thing I've thought is I feel like they need more representation for like the fan perspective within like
Mm.
the NBA Players Association and all that. I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, this era of player empowerment. I think it's great for players to go out and demand what they're worth, get what they're worth. And I mean, who doesn't try to make the most money they can at any job? It's
Yeah.
not like if at your work they say, oh, do you want to make 25 an hour or 20 an hour? You're going to be like, no, I'll take 15, please. As long
Yeah.
as you hire my friend. Like, that's what most people want NBA players to do. Like, take less so you can get another superstar.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you just want what you're worth.
Yeah.
A little different situation, but like, I feel like if they got more fan market representation in terms of like where they connect players with what fan experience is like, and get them more involved with seeing how it comes across, that it may help, because players do love the fans, and
Yeah.
they know that that's what helps the league make money and ultimately them make money. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's just, no matter what they say, there's such disconnect between fans, other than like a couple autograph sessions and stuff, pre-game and like community efforts guys
Yeah.
do. If I don't know, for lack of a better word, like type of Congress type deal where you have like representatives from each team that talk about the market experience and what you need to see from it. But I don't know. That's a job for someone much smarter than me and much more involved
Yeah.
than me. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it comes down to a lot of things in business, because again, at the end of the day, all teams are a business, and all the NBA is a business. It's gonna take a compromise of how much do we let the players get away with, and how much do we care about the fans. But I wanted to bring up something else. I'm glad you talked about you brought up the whole expansion thing. You were saying, these players could be coming off the bench dropping 40, 50. I think expansion would definitely make the league more competitive by spreading out that talent, because I apologize for being on my phone, but you saying it made me think of a post that I saw. So I went searching for the post and I found it. And it was talking about notable free agents that either have been waived or are coming up in the next couple seasons. And it was from Buckets, and they said these they listed these 8 notable free agents. They said Serge Ibaka, John Wall, Kemba Walker, LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMarcus Cousins, Stanley Johnson, Hassan Whiteside, and Carmelo Anthony. And then one of the top comments on that post said, "Damn, they're low-key a squad. Just put them on the Seattle Supersonics and see how far they make it together."
Yeah, it's like the way things are going now, there may not be any room for them on Raw. I mean, Blake Griffin's a bench player now. He was an all-star just 2 seasons ago. I know he's had injuries and stuff, but you mean to tell me you couldn't have a team in Seattle and Blake Griffin couldn't play decent minutes and still be a really good player?
Yeah.
I mean, LaMarcus off the bench was still putting up 12 and 5.
Yeah.
He's still a very good player. Melo's still a good player. They don't just die off. Kemba Walker put up 35 in that one game with Dallas. I'm they've still got it. They don't just lose the talent. They could still play.
Yeah. Well, we're already going on almost an hour and 30 here. So you got anything else to add, or you want to go ahead and call it there?
Man, let's call it. I think we done covered everything.
Yeah, we covered a lot. So that's all we got for this episode, guys. Hopefully you appreciated our takes and you liked what we had to say. There's always going to be some people that disagree, but hopefully you like the takes that we had, and at least you can.
We still love you, even if you disagree.
Yeah, we still love you. Even if you disagree with us, you're still watching the video. You're giving us those views. So no, I'm kidding. But
it is what it is.
It is what it is. But of course, this is Swisheel. All of his stuff will be in the description. Go check his stuff out. Again, he said he's got a big video coming up, and me and him talk with Clan a lot, so we're sort of a trio that we got going on. I still say that the 3 of us need to come together at some point, because it's always either you and Clan or me and Clan or me and you. The 3 of us haven't been together yet, but we're
Clan and I, we talk every day, so
yeah.
we got to get together. That'd be fun, man.
Yeah, it would be amazing, man. But yeah, go check out Swisheel. Check out his stuff. Again, a lot of his stuff has to do with college basketball and international players, and sort of the changing of the shift that this league is making in terms of at least of what I've seen from his channel is a lot about the shift the league is making in terms of international play and sort of draft picks and sort of the change in talent and sort of stuff like that. Unless you have any...
Or I just get pissed about something somebody says, and I'm like, you know what? I'm making a whole 10-minute video on this.
But yeah, man, anything else about your channel that you want to shout out? Any projects you're working on you want to talk about? Anything like that?
Bear with me. I was laid off back in... August, so I was unemployed for 6 months. I have a job again. My PC broke, so it's been a long time since I've actually been able to upload, but I'm kind of working on some long form content. As he mentioned, I'm working on stuff about what constitutes a win in a trade, and I'm trying to decide if I want to make that a series or just make that a big long video essay kind of deal. So experimenting with a couple stuff. Had one of my thumbnails go viral on Twitter, so that's cool. Go watch my Everybody Kawhi video. That's another one where I just got pissed off at people comparing everyone to Kawhi Leonard, so I made a video. But that's pretty much my channel in a nutshell.
All right, cool.
Sees something, reacts to it, that gets pissed off, and makes a video.
If you want my personal opinion, as like, even though I'm a content creator myself, you know, I am also a viewer as well because I spend a lot of my time on YouTube. You know, I could probably look at my screen time on, you know, like how iPhones show your screen time now. It'd probably be embarrassing. It'd probably say like
Oh
eight.
God, I don't look at that. That'll just depress
Yeah,
me.
I was gonna say it'll probably say 14 out of 24 hours on YouTube, but
That'll be worse because I'll fall asleep. So I'll use that to convince myself that my screen time's not that bad.
but I was gonna say, if you want my opinion, because I do look at your channel and I am like part of me is a viewer as well. I would prefer it just being a long video rather than a series because being
That's what I was thinking.
being an adult now, it's sort of weird that like I a lot of the times like either because I'm one of those guys where I always have to be listening to something, man. I always have a podcast or music on or something, and either if I'm waiting on something for like an hour or if I'm like doing a task for like an hour, I'm like I need something that's going to play as long as this task is gonna take. I don't need 4 autoplay 20-minute videos. I need one 80-minute video. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's why I've been
and,
watching
you
more
know,
podcasts. So
the
I would.
more I've gone on making stuff, it's more I've gotten annoyed because you want to make short videos that'll get you views, but I'm like, man, I got so much to say.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
what it's worth, I feel like I'm a good writer, and I'm like, I like that longer content because you can really get your voice through. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably going to be the route that I go because I'm
Yeah.
the same way. I love that like long form stuff. I watch a couple. I mean, I watch like video essays on video games and reviews.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
stuff
I
like
love
that.
video essays,
Film.
man. That's exactly what I was talking about. Like I was like, okay, like today, I was like, I gotta wait on getting my car oil changed. I'm gonna be in this chair for 2 hours rather than scrolling through YouTube like I'm scrolling through Netflix. Let me find one video that's 2 hours for me to watch while I'm waiting, rather than 5, 30-minute videos or something.
Well, shit, I'll dedicate the
Yeah.
first one to you then.
But yeah, man, like what was I saying? I honestly would prefer like a longer video, but that's just me. So if you wanted my opinion, but again, we've sort of been rambling for a minute here. So once again check out Swisheel, all of his stuff in the description, all that good stuff, and I think that's pretty much it. So Nathan Burnett, episode 42. See you guys in the next one, guys.